My key mission is to be not only living, eating, breathing, walking proof of, but to assist people in understanding their true nature of being, that they are God within a physical expression. So that the human aspect of who we are is an aspect, but we are in a human vehicle.
Welcome to the Awaken magazine podcast, where influential conscious leaders come to share the real stories behind their spiritual journey and how they're helping others awaken to love. I'm your host, David Trotter. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Phyllis Douglass. She is a spiritual mentor who facilitates states of awareness and consciousness through alchemical light language, through singing, and of course, her teachings. In her own words, she embodies the Seraphic presence as a radiant emanation of the eternal omnipresence, the divine source. She is the architect of living light, and we as one are a collective force. Now, in this conversation, you're going to hear all about her journey of awakening and how Archangel Michael guided her to accept her true self. We talk about the ways in which she works with sound and frequency and energy to help people transform. Specifically, I'm interested in her use of alchemical light language that she sings, and we'll link to all of her albums that are available on Bandcamp. You'll find those links in our show notes as well as in the article on our website. She shares why and how we should follow our excitement because it aligns with our higher self. And I ask her about her sacred alchemical tools that she handcrafts. They're beautiful rods and wands that are available on Etsy. I think you'll find those to be not only beautiful, but very powerful. And of course, we dive into how you can work with her in one-on-one sessions and her courses online. Now, if you're drawn to spiritual conversations that go beyond the surface, you are in the right place. And I want to encourage you to subscribe to the Awaken Magazine podcast on YouTube, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Click subscribe, leave a rating or a review. That's an easy way for you to help us spread the word about these inspiring interviews that we release each and every week. All right, let's dive into my conversation with Phyllis Douglass. Phyllis, it is great to be with you today. Thank you so much for taking time to connect with us.
Well, thank you. I am so excited to be here with you.
Yeah. I want to hear about your story of awakening to consciousness, mindfulness, spirituality. And I'd love to start with that kind of back in your childhood. Did you grow up in a home that had some sort of faith or spirituality as a part of it? Or did that come to you later in life?
Oh, goodness. I will have to condense this story. Uh, I was born essentially awake. And so when I was a little girl, and in fact, I remember being born because I remember being in this brilliant white room and I was talking to these beings in a different language, which I know to be light language. And they were saying, they were basically thanking me for my willingness to come into a physical life to do whatever my mission was, which I'm in now. And then I literally remember like this bright light and this kind of shock and coming down the birth canal. And then that was it. It was so funny. But when I was a little girl, I always saw spirits and, my parents couldn't figure out why I was afraid of the dark. And when I was 4 years old, I realized that my invisible playmates, so to speak, were angels because I grew up in a church, a Methodist church at the time, and my mother was Baptist before she converted. So within our household, there was a combination of the two. And I remember in Sunday school, I got my first little Bible, and there were those colorful plates in there with images. And I was kind of leafing through the pictures, and I saw one of angels, and I remember yelling out, "Oh, they're angels." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Oh, my friends." And I remember trying to explain that story. It was,
What did she say?
well, she placated me a little bit, I believe. Soon after that, I actually got kicked out of Sunday school because my beliefs and discussions with the angels and about God and all of that, my understanding of God, even at that, between the age of 4 and 6, was a lot different than they were teaching in the church
Mm.
atmosphere, I should say. Uh, and so they said I asked too many questions and they couldn't really answer them because, there's kind of a rote script there. So I had to go to big people church after that, which I was fine with. I remember, but that's the
But
way
that's
that
where you can't ask questions. You can't raise your
where you
hand.
can't ask. I know. But it was okay because I had I've always been surrounded by angels. They're here now. I've just always been surrounded by angels and connected in that way. It wasn't till they've told me all along, but it wasn't really until about 2 years ago I began to understand what I acknowledge what took place before I was born. And so I am Seraph, and I am in a physical form. And so when I acknowledged that, it became not so much about I am doing this, I am doing this. It became we as one are doing this. So, I've just really kind of allowed myself into to understand that we as one versus I. But when I was growing up, I realized soon after when telling people about my experiences that they didn't really have kind things to say. And so I stopped talking. And I realized that not everybody was like, people were not having the same experiences. So I wasn't sharing the experiences. What happened was when I was 15 years old, my grandmother passed. And she came to me. It was like 10:30 p.m. at night. And she said, "There's something that I need to tell you. And I've just realized this as I'm making my transition." And she said, "I am a seer." And I didn't realize that during my lifetime.
Was
But
she
she said,
saying this to you physically, or this was more of a spiritual experience?
well, she was standing in the room, kind of visceral aspect. And she said, "You need to know that you are a seer. And I've been told that I need to tell you that." And so when she said those words, when she said that, it was like this energy. I was kind of like, that's what I needed to hear. I needed to understand that there was so much more to the experience that I was having that other people didn't appear to be having. And I remember telling my father the next day because I got home from school and he was home early, and he came home early to tell me that his mother had passed. And I said, "Oh, I know. She came to visit me last night. And she told me I was going to get this ring. You had a diamond ring for me when I turned 16." And they didn't, neither one of my parents spoke to me truly for about 2 days because there was a ring he was supposed to give to me when I turned 16. And they were just like, "We don't know what to do with this." But the interesting thing, speeding ahead a little bit, uh, you know, I I stopped telling them about different experiences, even though I was hearing everything. And I kind of supposedly shut it down in my early 20s, went off to college, but I did still have experiences. But my mother told me later down the road, she said, "I want you to know that I am a prophetess, and I shut that down years ago." And I was just like, I got chills just now. I was thinking,
And what was her reason? Why did she do that?
because she was raised in a Baptist church, and that was that was evil as far as to be able to see the future or to be able to commune with spirits in any way, shape, or form within self versus through church. It was it was frowned upon. So she shut it down, and it scared her. But my sister and I kind of looked at each other, and we're like, "Yeah, no, you didn't shut that down." Because there were times that I always seeped through that she seemed to know things that she shouldn't have known. So it was kind of funny. But she just started to speak about that. And then I learned that ran through my mother's line and my father's line, and I'm Seraph. So I came here with a mission. So I had to kind of understand that. So from that point, growing up in a small town, I just began the only option I had at that time was to try different churches. Well, of course, I wasn't going to find what was in alignment or in resonance in a church. And so when I moved to a larger city to further my degree, I began to find, spiritual classes and classes about psychic mediumship and all of that. And so that was such a blessing. But it was also tied up in church because I was still going to church and I was doing these classes. And I was told to do both because they're like, you will have your own deeper understanding of religion, right? From a spiritual perspective. So I would sit amongst the congregation with a whole different understanding of what was going on or what it was I was hearing. And I had to read the Bible twice. And I didn't want to read the Bible twice, but I had to read the Bible twice. And when I got to certain parts, they're like, all right, we want you to understand what this means. 7 keys of Solomon. Those are like the 7 main energy centers, or what people call chakras. And so you're going through. And so their myth always has a specific reality to it, right? And so that's what they were teaching me. And so I've always had these teachings, as far as spiritual things that happened to me during my life. They wanted me to watch some of those scary paranormal, the paranormal movies. And I liked scary movies, but I was kind of done with them at the time. And they're like, no, we want you to watch them. So I sat down obediently and I watched several of them. And the key thing that they wanted me to get was that I had experienced many of those things in my earlier life that you see in these movies. And, and wondering why, they said, you need to understand what other humans, what they are experiencing in their lives so that you can truly help them from a deeper perspective. And, to understand what it is that they're going through, but also to believe in what it is that they're telling you. So that's really kind of what I'd been going through.
Yeah, amazing. At what point did you begin to focus more of your kind of like work life or career in more of this spiritual direction? How did that unfold for you?
The very first thing that set that off, like, this stuff is real, because there was always this little niggling notion that, am I crazy? But I couldn't tell myself you're crazy because, well, haul me off in a straitjacket type thing, because I had to believe in both worlds, so to speak. But when I was in grad school, there was this huge flight of cement steps. And I was just kind of tootling along to go visit a friend of mine. And I took a misstep at the top. And all of a sudden, this energy whooshed around me. It was like this blue, sparkly essence. And the next thing I knew, within seconds, I was taking the next step at the bottom platform. And I just remember standing there in shock, like, what the heck just happened? And I knew angels were there. I could feel this profound energy. And so I just turned around and I literally yelled, thank you. And I ran into the building because I was part in awe and I was part like, what happened? And it scared the heck out of me. But I realized, wow, okay, thanks. I get it. There is something higher, that there's a force that's more prevalent, that's higher than me, that I'm here to do more than I'm doing now. And that's really when the true spiritual unfolding began to take place. And so from there, I was guided intuitively towards different things. And it was really an accumulative experience that was really just preparing me. And I have done many things. I mean, I was a psychic medium. I belonged to the spiritualist church. So I was a podium medium for many, many years. I was doing kind of all of this. And gradually, it was like the energy kept shifting me out of these things. Okay, your time's up here. Time to move on. So I had a lot of that. And coming up, it's like, I would say, I started out in sound healing. I carted around my gongs and my singing bowls. Much of it I've sold. I still have a lot of it. And I began to use my voice when I was doing energetic work with a client. And Archangel Michael came in and said, "You are going to begin to sing."
Had you been a
And
singer growing up? I mean,
I,
obviously in the church we all sing, but like was that an emphasis for you with singing?
I was always singing because my father was really into jazz music and classical, and that's what I grew up with. So I played piano, I played the violin, and I started singing in the church choir as well. Uh, when I first started college many years ago, I was actually a violin and voice major. That didn't last very long, but I didn't have enough discipline. But really, it was more about the energies kind of taking me out of that. It's like, no, no, this is not where you want to be. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm.
Um, so I had to acknowledge that. But so I've always been musical and a musician of sorts. Um, so I leaned down in my client's ear and I said, "Apparently, I'm going to sing to you." And she was like, "Okay," you know. So I just opened my mouth and stuff came out, right? And she said, "Phyllis, that was like the most profound session I have ever experienced from anyone."
Mm.
And I was kind of like, I don't really know what this is. But that's part, singing and the creation through sound and vibration and frequency is part of my seraph nature. But they just suddenly brought all of these things in to my life. And so I wouldn't say that I really got to where it was where the real information started to come in until maybe a couple years ago. So,
Mm.
I was having experience after experience after experience, which is really what life is about, experiencing so that you have the next experience is more elevated, right? And so that's really what my life has been up to this point. So a couple years ago, things happened that I was like, all right, I need to accept this because I started to uh, do different missions for from my perspective, I've always called God the eternal omnipresent. And so I started to get my friend calls it heavenly mandate missions, rather, to do certain things with my particular skill set. And so from that, I was taught, or more taught, understanding how to bilocate, but they would help me bilocate. And so, but a couple years ago, these different missions began, and those have developed into deeper, more. I don't even have a word for it. Sometimes very confidential things, but so I am called to do these specific missions out of body as well, which is part of my spiritual practice. That's
Mhm.
generally not known by many people, but I guess it's known now. Yeah.
Zone now, Phyllis. Okay, I've got a couple of questions for you, and a lot of it
Yeah.
is around language because I always like to make sure people understand. When you say that you are seraph and you have a seraph nature, what does that word seraph mean? What is that? Help us understand that.
Seraph are the seraphim angels, and I am a seraphim angel. I was given a soul aspect so that I could actually enter into physical form. I didn't start really telling people about that until a couple years ago, either.
Mhm.
But one of the key things is, um, one day I was doing the transmission work that I do, and when that was complete, Archangel Michael came in and said, "You have to begin understanding and accepting who it is that you truly are, because if you do not, you cannot complete your mission."
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, you've been telling me that for years," type of thing. Yeah, and I knew, but I just didn't want to express that. I didn't want that to be something that was expressed through me. I
Yeah.
don't even know why, because now I'm like, whatever. But at that time, there was that fear aspect of like, what is going to happen if I step into that higher arena?
Yeah.
But really, nothing seemed to happen. People just respect me more, and they seem to understand my work more. And then from that part, when that energy came in, and more of my angelic powers, right? Then my work just jumped to the next level, as did my
Mhm.
mission work. as
Mhm.
well as to what it is that I can do. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. I want to know about what you sense your mission is right now in life, but I'm curious before we talk about that is the bilocation. What does it mean to bilocate? And I know some of these missions, it sounds like are confidential, but maybe give us an example of a possibility of a mission that you've participated in that maybe is less confidential. I'm just
Mhm.
curious so people could understand this.
Oh yeah, I've done a
What is
lot.
what does it mean? What
um,
does it mean to bilocate, and what are these missions?
yeah, as far as for me, I can be in two different places at once, but I can be physically in another location so that my consciousness goes to that location. So my body is just is here, right? Um, so for me, it used to be like, oh, I can see, I can envision. I'm a seer. I can envision being in another space and looking through another being's eyes, or I can be there physically, right? So I can take a form in another place, and my consciousness is within that form. Part of my consciousness is still back, with my body. But when people have witnessed that, when it first began to happen, it would seem like I was almost asleep or something in my true physical body.
Mhm.
Um, but now sometimes I can talk, and I'm in both places at once. Right.
Mhm.
Let's see, what can I had to I was told for several years that I was going to activate Gobekli Tepe so that they could begin to find some of the different locations that have since come forward. And I always thought I was going to go there and do something. But that was my first buy location because they're like, no, no, you don't need to purchase a plane ticket and fly. And because of certain things, it's not like I could just go walk up there and start doing the work that I do. They
Mhm.
would not allow me to do that. So they bilocated me there. And
Mhm.
so I could be there, and I did activate different plateaus that they have since discovered.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was one of the things. The scary one, okay, I'm told to state this, but I'm not going to state where it was. I was told that there was an entity that most people would call demonic, but there was an entity that had been brought forward uh, thousands of years ago within this architecture, which now still stands, but they've built on top of it. It's always been the same place. But that there was this entity that was kept in a chamber below, and I needed to release it because there weren't people alive in that quote administration any longer that actually knew anything about it. So
Mhm.
here was an abandoned creature, right? And so they tell me how to prepare what it is I need to be able to pinpoint the location that I'm going. So I did that, and then and first of all, I'm like, I don't believe you. And so I'm out of body, and here I am standing in this stone hewn chamber with these like old gas lights, and I'm
Mhm.
standing there, and I feel the breath of this dark shadow breathing on me. The head turns and looks at me, and I could tell it was very, very angry, but it was not angry at me. And so I was like, yeah, okay. Okay, I believe you, right? And so what I told it was, I said, I'll be back within 7 days to release you. And so I left. And so within 7 days, I think it was right on day 6 or 7, I create like a little ceremony thing, and I went and I released it. And when I released it, I was able to open up, and because it's not from here, I was able to open up an aperture through our reality. And when it came by, it telepathically spoke to me, and it said, and it brought me to tears at the time because it said, I thought all hope was lost,
Mhm.
was what I heard in my head. And it left and closed the aperture, and then I came back. So there are different things where I go to like war torn areas and need to do things. There are places I go that there are conflicts between this reality, angelic realm, or galactic realm, or within this our human reality. So they've amped it up over the years and I'm learning, because I'm learning what it is I'm to do, how to do it. And so then I'm able to go and do what it is that I do.
Hmm. Beyond these kind of like smaller missions, how would you describe your overall mission in this season of life? Like if I meet you on the street and I'm like, "Oh, hi Phyllis, nice to meet you. My name's David. Da, da, da. What are you up to in life?" How would you describe that mission?
My key mission is to be not only living, eating, breathing, walking proof of, but to assist people in understanding their true nature of being, that they are God within a physical expression. And that's pretty much it. So that the human aspect of who we are is an aspect, but we are in a human vehicle. But the truth of who we are is that we are divine, eternal beings of light that are anchored to this vehicle, that are experiencing a physical life. We have to understand that before we can truly begin the higher aspects of our process of awakening and ascendancy. Because ascendancy, it occurs in physical form. We don't have to leave the body to ascend any longer. I used to have an argument with them. Isn't that like descension? But no. So we're ascending within our physical form. And that's just more of an anchoring of our I am presence, which is our aspect which is closest to the eternal omnipresent God, into the physical form, so that we may express as our holy selves in this form.
Hmm. Beautiful. One of the ways that you serve humanity in this mission is what you call alchemical light language. And you do this through private sessions, group presentations, and even albums. And so I'm curious, when were you first exposed or came across light language? How did that develop in your life? And maybe how is it different now in the way that you express it or utilize it?
Because I'm always speaking with the angels, and I was when I was a little girl, I was speaking like kind of an unknown language my parents called gobbledygook, uh, but it was actually light language. And so I was speaking it as a child because I was communicating to my friends. And I stopped that, as I got older. But it began to kind of creep in that I'm like, what is that? It's more in singing, and I'm thinking, oh, it's seed syllables, tones type of thing that I'm singing. But what happened was a friend invited me to a class in Mount Shasta, which is similar Shambhala Reiki, I think it was called. And there were supposed to be 7 people there. And I always know Spirit has something in store for me when I get there and those people are not there. Right? So there were 7 people and only 2 people showed up. It was myself and my friend. And I'm thinking, uh-oh. So we're going through this class, and she said, I'm being told that I'm to do a halo opening. I was given this ability many years ago. And so would you like me to do that? And we're like, well, sure. So I was the first one on the table. So she touched me and I was gone. And I was back in that bright, brilliant space, and I was talking in this language, which I know what they call alchemical light language. That's the name we've kind of decided upon. But I was speaking that language with these beings, and I felt my body shaking. And she said, "Oh my God, Phyllis, I have been trying to bring you back for like 20 minutes." And when she asked me what my experience was, I opened my mouth and I spoke. In my brain, I was speaking English, but my words were coming out in light language.
Mm.
8.5 hours later, I could speak English. And I was kind of freaking out because I thought, okay, you don't understand. I can't go home to my husband speaking light language. It was just like, so it's kind of funny now, but it really wasn't that funny then. But we were kind of getting a kick out of it. And I just remember relaxing in our hotel room, and my friend turned and asked a question. And I turned to her and I spoke English. And I was like, oh, thank you. But ever since that time, I've been able to speak light language, and it's expanded, and because it's a frequency based language. So the more that I began to allow that to flow, which is it's my language, then the more energy, that the more resonance and frequency and vibration began to flow through that. So the light language is really kind of a bridge, or it's a carrier for the encoded symbols and light language and sacred geometrics and all of that, which is frequency based language, right?
Hmm.
uh, and so, part of it, I call it alchemical light language because my light language actually assists people alchemically, right, in and releasing distortions and releasing all that no longer serves them or is in resonance with their true essence or their divine template. Some people call it like a soul blueprint, right? And
Mhm.
so that is an alchemical correspondence to what it is that people are receiving that takes place within the body that actually activates our awakening process. And that also includes energetic or frequency based recalibration of the nervous system. There's all sorts of things that are going on. So that's why we call it alchemical light language,
Mhm.
because it is transforming or transmuting something within you and causing an effect, that next step.
Mhm. Fascinating. I started speaking what was called to me at age 18, speaking in tongues in the context
Mhm,
of a Christian environment,
mhm,
and did that all through college because I was in a college atmosphere where that was a part of the Christian culture. And then after that, became a pastor in more of evangelical churches where that wasn't, kind of a part of the thing. So I kind of set it aside. And it wasn't up until, 5 years ago where I was entering into these spiritual environments where I heard other people speaking this, and I'm like, "What? Are you kidding me? How, like, you do this?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, we call it light language." And so I've allowed that to really come back into my life in a beautiful way. And what's interesting, my experience has always been that it was um, something that I could, with volition, start and stop. And it wasn't until several years ago in a psychedelic experience where it was the very first time that that flowed through me in an involuntary way, where I couldn't stop it. Like it just, like it was going through me, and it was one of the most powerful things I'd ever experienced in my life. It's so powerful. I love that you call it alchemical light language because of the impact that it's having on others in your presence. You your newest album, you have many albums, but your newest album is called Creation.
mhm.
And I'm curious about the inspiration behind this particular album. And maybe if you could describe it, we'll obviously link to it. Um, what is the inspiration behind it? What will people experience when they listen to it? And specifically, I'm very curious about how you would want people to listen to it because it is, it's different than if you're popping on Spotify to um, jam out in your car, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. Uh, well, with my music, all of my music is they are transmissions of a
Yes.
story. And I have never created music in and of itself, like on my own. Like, I'm going to create a song. So, what happens is Elohim says it's time to go into the recording studio. And so I literally book, I go into the recording studio with the angels, and they generally, prior to that, they will tell me what instruments, if any, to bring. I'm downloaded with any lyrics that there might be. Most of my lyrics are not initially song lyrics. They come to me more in like a poetic sense of poetry, right? And so I began writing for this album. I began writing kind of all of these poems about creation, poems about even my life and my own evolutionary process, and also looking at the evolutionary process of Homo sapiens and the evolutionary process of just how the earth came into being and all of that. So I had begun to write all of this. And so we went into the studio. They had given me the name Creation. They told me it's going to be like your creation story, but not just mine, because everything is interconnected. It is, they call it his story, her story, our story, his story type thing, right? And it is the story of everyone and everything. And so that energy is brought into creation. So what they do is they say track one. So I'll just stand in front of the microphone. If they'll tell me if it's vocals or if I'm supposed to be playing some form of instrument. There might be the tune that will come into my head, and I'll just play that. So it is all divinely orchestrated. Uh, and this album that just came out is something I worked on for many months, whereas other songs just came through in like 2 hours and I put it out. That's it, because it's just putting that frequency, putting that energy out into the world, right?
Mhm.
When people play it, that energy ripples out into the world. It's that type of effect. So with creation, though, it is the ultimate transmission, and that there are 9 alchemical songs, and there are 9 kind of interludes into those songs. So there are 9 what they call celestial keys, which is the alchemical light language activation, and there are 9 what they're calling Genesis gates, and these are channeled passages of sonic awakening, which occurs between each alchemical song. And so from the very beginning, it's taking you from the very beginnings of creation where there is no thing. And it is coming through, it's like an awakening process, and the energy runs through it until the final song is kind of this more futuristic genesis of our becoming the new human. And so that is the album. So no, it's not something that you're going to rock out to, in your car or anything like that. You can listen to it in meditation and so forth. But when you listen to it, it permeates your space and elevates your space with it's a transmission, and it's also an activation, all
Mhm.
wrapped into one. So it's going to uplift your environment, but it's also going to assist you in opening. It does something to you the more that you listen to it.
Mhm. So we will link to the album, which right now is on Bandcamp. Is that correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Awesome. And that's the only place people can access it at this point. Is that right?
This week I will be putting it. It'll be up on like Apple Music and Spotify and all of that. But I just hadn't. I just started out on Bandcamp. One of the things is because it's not really music that you're going to purchase. Just like what people might, dance music or something. It's a transmission. And so I was fighting with whether or not to keep that, because there's a reciprocity that takes place when people listen or they purchase that I also receive. Whereas I don't really receive when it's out and about. Um, so that's something that I've been kind of working through. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you also offer soul architecture and harmonic recalibration sessions. That
Mhm.
is a mouthful, Phyllis. That is quite the name. Soul architecture and harmonic recalibration sessions. So I want to hear all about these. What are these are private sessions. I
Mhm.
want to hear what are the presenting problems or challenges that people are coming to you with. They go, "Man, I'm wrestling with this. I need Phyllis's help." And then what happens in these sessions?
Well, one of the things is most of my clients and students until recently were women, and it's also people of a more mature age who have maybe gone through corporate America, or they're just retiring, or they're getting to this point in their lives that they're like, I there's more. to life than this. They're unhappy, and they're just kind of looking for that something else that they know is there, but they can't find it, because everyone is undergoing just that call from the eternal omnipresence home. There's a call that's flowing through all of humanity, calling you home to self, calling you home to true self, right? And so people are hearing that, and there's this discomfiture that's beginning to happen in their everyday life. Like, oh my goodness, there's something else. And they just become dissatisfied with the way life is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is primarily what it is. People call me a healer, and yes, people have healed. Many people have healed from things, either immediately or, an unfolding healing process. But I don't like the word healer, because I facilitate healing through what it is that I do. And you are your greatest teacher, and you are your greatest healer. So, what it is that I do is facilitating healing through you. So, I don't take claim to that healing that took place in that sense. You
Mm-hmm.
yourself are a powerful healer. And in fact, because I want to say that a lot of people that come to me, the only disappointments I've ever had are people had in their mind that I have come to you recently. It was, my foot hurts. But you are so much more than your foot. And I do not focus on your foot or the fact that your foot hurts. Because sometimes in this physical life, something hurts because your body is trying to tell you that there is, like, listen to me, there is more to this expression, this experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we need to actually experience pain because it is opening us up to something else, some other evolutionary process. So sometimes a quote healer cannot heal a pain because that pain is actually supposed to be there as a catalyst or a bridge to something else. So for me, the work that I'm doing is an awakening process for you, is revealing something within you that is stating that your present reality is no longer a good fit. And you are out of resonance, which is when we were talking about people, like, oh my gosh, I'm just not happy. What's going on? You are actually expanding out of resonance with life as it has been in the past. And so I am facilitating that next step within you by reopening you up and revealing those things within you that are truth, right? So there is a process of awakening that begins to unfold, but it's about creating change or transformation in your life by dismantling everything is frequencies. So I'm dismantling any discordant frequencies and I'm bringing them into balance, or I'm bringing into higher frequencies through entrainment, right, to elevate a certain aspect of self. So I am literally shifting your reality, expanding your reality, and opening you up to that next higher expression of self. Throughout that process, within that process of unfolding, is when you heal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
These sessions are primarily online. Is that
They are all online. Yeah, my seraph nature is I'm called the architect, and it's about creating new worlds, creating new realities, and so forth. So when in a session, when I look at you, I see your physical and energetic architecture along with just the earth grid matrix. So it can be quite overwhelming because I see it all and then they pinpoint my vision in. So then I'm looking at your physical energetic architecture, and then I'm guided to the areas, or I can see the areas that are, and essentially, so I would explain that I have a knowing of what the divine template or the soul blueprint is.
Mhm.
And I don't know how, but it's there. So I do. So I can start to reconfigure things either through sound or energetic manipulation. And I get to a point where I've created balance within your energetic architecture, and then we are complete. So what happens is, because your frequency has been altered, you've been altered, you start to change, right? And that's really all it is about. You start to change. You start to spiritually unfold, energetically unfold, physically unfold. A change or a transformation takes place.
Do you find that this is more of like a one session experience for people or multiple sessions that are helpful? How does that work for clients?
It's a little bit of both. People generally do multiple sessions, but not at the same time. Because when you come in, we're going to look at who you are in that present moment. So if you've done a session earlier on last year, a few months ago, you're not going to be the same person. So typically people intuitively like, I feel a little stuck again,
Hmm.
right? I want to take that next step. Their own
Hmm.
intuition guides them back to me. And we'll do another session, and then that elevates you up to that next step, and then they go away, and whatever happens happens. Whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's really about helping people go up the proverbial ladder, the rungs of
Hmm.
the ladder.
Hmm.
But some people don't. Some people, I don't see them again, and I had a woman, I hadn't seen her for a couple of years, and I thought, I sent out, I send out emails, how you doing, how was the session? She came back for another session, and all it was like, oh my God, my life changed. It blew up. And so she's explaining all of this that unfolded for her. And I love to hear that. And I thought, thank you for that, because that keeps me going. That keeps me doing what it is that I'm doing, knowing that what it is that I'm doing is having a beautiful, powerful, positive effect on people's lives. And so
Hmm.
that was lovely. And so, she came back for that next step. So it's a little bit of both, because you are so powerful. I'm telling it, the understanding is, when you step into your true nature, you are powerful. Your
Hmm.
birthright is that of Archangel Michael's here is like Jesus of Nazareth. Right? Yes. Because biblically speaking, when you look back at the Bible and so forth in scripture, Jesus was always stating, you're just like me. You can do what it is that I'm doing. I'm not special.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
in that sense, he wasn't. He just knew his father, right? He had that deep connection and understanding that he is God in physical form.
Hmm.
And but so are we. So when we begin to understand that, that's when our life begins to change, and we become free from the holds, or almost enslavement in some instances, of the old paradigms, and we become sovereign, and we're able to begin creating our own lives.
Hmm. One of the things that is included in this experience is what you call a soul key. What
Mhm.
is a soul key, and how can an individual work with it?
The Elohim, the angels, guides, and so forth, they will bring your energy into a form. So a soul key is like some people call it, it's a symbol. Some people call it a glyph, right, or something. So it is essentially a symbol that is created, that holds the frequency of our sessions, and the session and everything that you've received. So I will send you the recordings, which includes the audio recording, and then I'll send you a ping file of your symbol. So the symbol, you print it out, and you can hang it in rooms that you frequent. I always tell people, put it on your bedside table, place one on your altar, because what it does is, it's elevating and imbuing the environment of your space, the atmosphere, with those higher frequencies. So you're
Mhm.
you're steeped in it like a tea bag, right?
Ah, beautiful, beautiful. You mentioned earlier your husband. Do you happen to, are you still married?
Yes. Mhm.
And how does he's seen you through, I would assume, a metamorphosis of this development of who you are. How does he integrate that himself?
I don't know that he does. Um, he is very honoring and very respectful, but I remember early on he just said, "I don't have a spiritual bone in my body."
Interesting. And
Yeah.
so how do you navigate that? I ask this because I think a lot of individuals who are
Mhm.
healers, teachers, and coaches uh, are with a partner or married who maybe doesn't understand,
Mhm.
kind of what they do. And yet there's a, love and affection and enjoyment and friendship. And so how do you personally navigate that or, process that?
What I had to understand, I asked that a lot, many years ago. And I was like, I'm so sad because, whatever. And they said, well, your husband is your rock of Gibraltar. And so they gave me this image of my husband next to this giant stone. And I was tied to the stone and I was floating up there like a helium balloon. And so he actually roots me, right? He has so much light. He may not know it, but he has so much light. And he actually roots me into this physical reality so that I can do what it is that I do. I remember talking to him one day many years ago, and he morphed into a Franciscan monk. And I was like, ah, yeah. So he doesn't have any knowledge of that, but he's already lived lives with it. He's here for me. um, but I remember one time, it was kind of funny to me now, but I was just mad. I was fed up with it. And I just remember stomping off into the bedroom and shutting the door. And not long after that, he came stomping in and he said, you have to realize I'm here and you are way in the heck over here. And I don't know what it is that you do, but you must be damn good at it. And he stomped out. I was
Wonderful.
just like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
wonderful.
so really, sometimes I think where relationships get in trouble is people get married and they think that you're just two peas in a pod the entire time, and that's not true. There's an evolutionary process for everyone. Things change. It's not all even keel the entire time. So really, I think when people go into relationships, and I've been talking to other people that have the same type of relationship that I do, you have two people that have they're weaving their lives together. So you have that common ground that always exists between you, but it also allows you to be who it is that you are, right? So a lot of relationships fail when one person is saying, but I don't want you to be who it is that you are. I want you to be who it is that we are. I want you to be who it is that I am, right? Or in alignment with who I am. But when you look at a relationship, there's always a resonance. And a lot of times when relationships fail, you fall out of resonance, right? So it can take work at times, but you have to also keep intact what it is you came together for in the first place. So
Mhm.
there's three aspects to a relationship. I always say it's you, it is the other person, and it is that confluence of energy that brought you together. So you have to pay attention to and positively fuel the confluence of energy that resides between the two of you.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. I'm curious about your Starfire light technology training. This is something that you offer a multi-step process. I'm
Mhm.
curious about who this is for and how it would benefit them.
Okay, Starfire light technology is for everyone. It is a light technology that awakens and drives you to that point of ascension, if that is your desire. And it can be utilized as a healing modality. Primarily, it is for you, but it is also can be utilized and is utilized as a healing modality to work with other people as well.
Mhm.
So that was brought to me I was doing like a different energetic modalities, and it was brought to me kind of piecemeal. Starfire was brought to me, which was just a frequency at the time, a solar frequency. So gradually they built this as I began to work with it, and they said, "Boop, this is Starfire light technology." So I just downloaded all of the information then and all of the different gates. So it is an initiatory process that can take you through 5 separate gates.
Mhm.
And the fifth gate is quintessence, which is essentially the embodiment of your I am presence, the ability to that process. And so it takes you from level one of the recognition that everything is made of what's called the seven frequencies of origin: earth, wind, fire, water, solar, lunar, all of that, right? Those are the elements of all things in existence. So you begin to have a deep dive in that, and it takes you progressively through. And as I brought it in, I started to initiate people. I have like a large core group now, and there's other people now that are doing the gates 1 and 2. So we're spreading it. It has become more and more exponentially powerful beyond measure, that everyone is like, oh my goodness, what is happening? This is a gift. Um, this is a gift from God, essentially, through Elohim, that has come to our reality for humanity to utilize in their awakening process. So as you progress through it, it is opening you up and releasing those things. I can explain it in one simple way. So years ago, the angels said, you're like a holy sepulcher, like a goblet, right? And so if you think about this goblet, you've got the cup and it comes to here. The physical body is the stem of the goblet, but it's hollow, and your feet are grounded or rooted into the floor, let's say, or if it's a goblet, the table. But anyway, so light is coming in, is filling the goblet, and it becomes narrower and it comes forcefully down. It's pulled down through the stem. So as the light is coming down through the crown and into the physical body, it starts applying pressure. And it applies pressure to those things that are no longer in resonance with the truth of who it is that you are, which is why all of a sudden past experiences, emotions come forward, all of this. It's like, oh gosh, I haven't thought of that in many years. Trauma. So people keep saying, why is all of this coming forward? It's because light is coming in, and it is bringing, as the pressure of that light comes down into this physical temple, this physical form, it pushes all of this stuff, it bubbles up, because you have to deal with it, right? We have to deal with these unresolved emotions, and we have to release all of these beliefs that are no longer truth, right? Because new truths have come, and then we have this fight. It's like, oh my God, what do I do with that? At some point, you have to say, I understand that to be true, which means what I thought to be true for many years is not. So you let that go and you step into new truth, right? And so that's really what it's doing. It is bringing in more and more and more light, but it's also assisting you in releasing all that is not in alignment with that light, with that higher truth.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful visual. Yeah, thank you. Another thing that you offer are sacred alchemical tools. And we'll, of course, link to this at alchemicalsacreds.com.
Mhm.
And I am curious about, I looked at it basically goes to your Etsy site, I believe, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Mhm.
And you've got these beautiful tools that I want to learn more about the tools, what the purpose is. And
Mhm.
specifically, I know that you're able to share with us the Lemurian healing rod and pathway receptor rods. So talk to us about, how did you get into this? What are these tools? How people can use them?
Heavenly mandate again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One day because I used to create customize or commission jewelry many years ago. And they came in and they said, you're going to begin to create this tool. And they said it's a Lemurian healing disc, is what they said. A Lemurian healing medicine. So and they just kind of came in. I was dreaming. I woke up like, what? Well, the funny thing was they showed me what it was, and this is what it turned out to be. This is a I don't know if you
Is
can
this
really
made out
see it.
of
It's
what is it made
copper.
out of?
It's copper, yeah, and then it's etched with light language, and then it's alchemically activated. So the funny thing was, I had this image, and then this gentleman from across the world in the UK, he messaged me. He said, I met you in a class years ago in America, and you're going to think this is really weird, but I was in a meditation and I was told to contact you to create a Lemurian healing rod.
No way, Phyllis. No way. Are you kidding me?
No,
No way.
I'm not kidding you. I got
You
choked.
had this download, this thought, this mandate, and then boom, this guy. How long? How long did it take that guy to call?
It was only a couple days. I mean, it was like a couple days. Yeah.
He used
He
that
and
is
he messaged me first, and I said, "That is so weird because I just got this message, this download that I was to create this." And it was interesting. I think I had done something with copper. I don't even remember now, but it was like I said, "Okay, so I'm going to create it." And he said, "Well, when you create it, I'll buy it." That was pretty much it. So I got another download, and this intuitive hit about like where to. I didn't know how to make this stuff. I didn't know how to etch copper. I didn't even know what these were. So I got the imagery. Um, I created something a little different. They're like, no, it's not going to be, because the original is actually called a Lemurian healing disc. It's a flat copper disc, and I want to create one of those, but I haven't yet. And they said, no, because that's not in alignment with your reality, humanity. So they said it's going to be a rod because people know wands and all of that, right? So I created it. I learned how to etch. I went through all these trial and error things, and and so it really wasn't that much trial and error. It was pretty direct, but it was more about the chemicals I needed to use and what I needed to do. And then they said, okay, now we're going to alchemically activate it. So they are not alchemically activated within our reality, but I do have a chamber. I put them in the alchemical activation chamber. If it's specific to someone, then their name and birth date and everything goes in there. And then Elohim comes in, and I can, if I sit there and watch for hours. I remember one time coming in and I'm like, oh, because I could see energetic, uh, almost holographic images of the items lift up and just up. And, I hadn't known what I thought. They came down and did something even until fairly recently, like a year ago. And they're like, no, Phyllis, we take those items somewhere else. We alchemically activate them to create what it is. So they are what they call living conscious beings. And so then they bring it back down in a certain number of days, and then I wrap it up. I don't touch them. I wrap them and I ship them off. So when you receive the item and you open it up, take it out of the bag and you touch it, you'll feel it alchemically bond to you. So you become the sole practitioner of whatever that item is, or the sole owner of whatever that item is, so that other people can't use it. So that would be like the Lemurian healing rod. Now this
what
is
do
for,
you do with that rod? What's the
you
purpose?
can it's for spiritual healing. And it's also enhances your own personal gifts, whatever that might be, right? You may be doing healing work intuitively. You may have been taught Reiki or some other type of energetic form. It takes it to the next level. So it enhances anything that you do. So you can kind of feel the energy go through it. So, I mean, you can point it at something. You can just simply hold it. If you're doing like a meditative practice, you can use it in ceremony or ritual. It becomes an extension of who you are and what it is that you do, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
You can also stand it on end like this, and it's almost like radionics. So if you create a crystal grid around it and you write someone's name on a piece of paper or something, fold it up, put it underneath there, you have an intention of, please send this energy continually off somewhere or to someone. You can do that. So there are many things. I have a class, a 3.5 hour workshop that people can purchase. Now, then I created the pathway receptor rods. So there's two rods. You hold them in hand like Egyptian rods. And these do not alchemically bond, because you can use them yourself, but you can also use them with clients. So say you are working one-on-one in person with a client. They're lying on a massage table, or some people, psychologists, I heard, they have their patients hold them as they're going through session. What it does is it begins to allow what it does, it helps the energy flow through your body. So if someone's working with you, there are blockages, it helps to release those blockages through your own system, like physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and energetically.
Mhm.
So these you can hold in meditation. And people don't understand. Okay, I started creating these. I'm like, okay, I'm doing what I'm told, but I didn't want at first I didn't really want to do anything else with it. Like I had one, I never used it. Other people were coming back to me like, "Oh my god, this." I mean, if you read my 5-star reviews, and I'm not like saying that for any reason, I
Oh,
had to go
people love
read
them.
them, and I'm like, "Are these people crazy?" No, no.
Yeah. People love them. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, there must be something to this. I guess I'll use it myself now. Uh, but so I started to work with it, and that's when the class came through and all of that. Because I'm always, I think that's the aspect I love about myself most is I'm always tinged with a little bit of belief that is any of this true, because that keeps me grounded in everything that I do. I could be just flying around doing stuff. And a lot of people tell me, you're so authentic, you're so grounded, you are so humble. And I'm just me. And I never
Mm.
want to stop being me because this is who I am, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to help people. And and so it's interesting that I started to gradually understand how powerful the tools were that I create based upon the response from
Sure, sure.
people. And I started to create some other things. I create like the celestial power chamber, which holds and emanates your personal power that you can wear. It also has a protective measure. So it's kind of like a talisman that you can wear. It keeps you protected, but from outside influences, but it also it extends and emanates your own personal power, so you can wear it within daily life and whatever it is you do. So I'm bringing in a new thing now, which I'm really excited about, that people can watch for.
That's
I'm
so
not going to
great.
actually, I can't tell you what it is. Actually, I was going to, but they said no.
Okay.
And this will be one of the most powerful things that I've created, and I'm so excited to be doing this. Uh, but yeah, so those are the tools. So again, they are for your own awakening process, spiritual awakening process, to elevate your healing process or what it is that you do with other people. But it's also the same thing as the rest of my work, is helping to open you up to your own full embodiment within this
Mhm.
form.
Mhm. Alchemicalsacreds.com. Of course, we'll put the link to that in our show notes. You have so many ways that we've talked about today, Phyllis, that you are helping people, as you said. If someone wanted to engage with your work, like what would be a good first step where you go, oh, why don't you do this and kind of begin down this path?
You know, the first thing for anyone, because typically they're kind of separate, my Etsy shop, Alchemical Sacred, and the work that I do, and they're not. Everything, they're intertwined, they're rooted together. But typically, I tell people, do a session. Like, if you have a call, and in fact, I used to offer a couple different sessions, different levels, and now they're like, no, everything's been refined, and now I only offer the one session,
Mhm.
which is a refinement and a weaving of all that I am and everything that I do.
Mhm.
So it takes you from who you present yourself to be in that moment that I meet you, and begins to elevate you from there. So a lot of people think, "Oh, I'm not ready for that session," type of thing. No, you're ready. There's no preparatory thing. It helps you to begin to unfold, or to unfold further. All right. So really, it's the key thing is to book a session. All right.
Mhm. Good, good. That's the first step. Okay, where can they do that and where can they follow you online?
I guide everyone to my website, which is just my name, Phyllis Douglass with two S's.com. Right. And everything is there. And from there, you can go, different places. Uh, but everything is there. I am just moving, kind of shifting some of my work as there's a new platform. So I'm just in the process this week of doing all of the onboarding and get everything there, so that I have like a one-stop Phyllis shop. Like, okay, this is Phyllis, right? I don't like being spread out. Do that. So that's my Phyllis hub, right? It's
Yeah, yeah. Phyllis,
phyllisdouglass.com. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Two S's. Make sure you get the two S's. Of course, we'll
Two
link to
S's,
all of.
Douglass. Yes.
Yes, we'll get you your website, all of your social media. We'll link to that in all the show notes and all the wonderful places. Phyllis, if there's someone who is listening today and they're feeling, as you mentioned earlier, kind of stuck, like, is there more to life? I'm not feeling it right now. What encouragement would you give them today?
A lot of times when people are stuck, they are diminishing themselves, or they've allowed other people to diminish them, their true worth or their true value, or their true essence. And so it's about following your excitement. The one key thing that we've been given intuitively, people say, oh, it makes my heart sing. I just, that generates, I'm so excited about something. Follow your excitement, because that's your intuition. That's your higher self that's saying, this is what's in alignment with who it is you truly are. This is a direction that you're supposed to be going. But a lot of people they have within their minds that I'm supposed to be, they learned that old paradigm. I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be doing this for my true worth and value, right? No, the key thing is we are here to experience. We are not here to become defined by our experiences, right? So that's one of the key things I want to share, because the first experience is our birth. And then we have experience after experience after experience until our final experience, where we transition from this physical form. So when we have an experience, it's a process of learning. It's a process of experiencing. It's a process of value. And so it could be, oh, that was exciting. I can't wait to move on to the next experience. Or it can be, that was horrible. I never want to experience that again. And I move on to the next experience. Because when we understand the truth of who we are, we understand that we are the creator of this reality. And so it's about, what is it that I want to create? And go with that and follow your excitement. Because even if you think you're like, oh no, I can't do that, that's just too hard. No, because you wouldn't have even had the thought if it wasn't something you were supposed to do. So if you have a thought, I'm going to create this, then you move in that direction, because then the universe, your angels, your guides, your loved ones who have crossed are like, yay, okay, how can we help her? How can we assist her on that path? And as soon as you take those first few steps, it's like whoosh, they step in and they either carry you, or they give you signposts like a map as a which way do I go? And you're like, oh, I go that way. They're directing you along the way so that you can accomplish what it is that you desire. It might be hard, but if you ask for assistance, you're going to receive the tools and the guidance that you need to get from point A to point B, right? So key thing, follow your excitement, because your excitement has been speaking to you all along and you have not been listening.
Wonderful. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you so much. I've taken multiple nuggets with me today that I am personally going to be thinking about and embracing over the next few days. So, Phyllis, it's great to be with you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your story. Really appreciate it.
You are very welcome. And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Awaken Magazine podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and our other conversations, would you mind taking a moment to leave a 5-star review and maybe even a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? That's one of the ways that you can give back to the show and help us reach more people. And of course, feel free to share the episode with a friend. And if you're not already on our email list, we send out an inspiring email every Monday morning full of articles and interviews. Just head on over to awakenedmagazine.com and click subscribe and join for free. Our hope is that all the resources we share will help our world continue awakening to love.